What's up, everybody? It's Concrete Zebra with Craftmaster Productions, and today I'm going to show you guys how to do a J.Cole Forrest Hills Drive beat. What's up, everybody? It's Concrete Zebra with Studio1Tutorials.com, and today we're going to be doing a J. Cole Forrest Hills Drive beat. First, I want to say what's up to the new subscribers: Sambo187, Todd Dickinson, S Drop Beats, Philip Fundament, Al Walker, AG the OG, Keo6283, Valentino, Sean Dale, K Wells Music, Smarty McFly, Billy Glenn, Elijah Jones, Christian S, Later That Night, Power Music, Nathan Francis, Young Shy 305, and Keys Music. So I appreciate the support. You guys' interaction has been overwhelming. I love interacting with you guys in the comments and seeing everybody's different take on how they use the program, and everybody's got different ideas for tutorials in the future, and I'm gonna get around to doing all of them. I want you guys to hear what we're gonna be doing today. Check this out. Yeah, so the J. Cole tutorials have been heavily requested all over the internet, and I didn't want this to just be like a strictly trap channel, just showing a whole bunch of different styles of trap. Me personally, I don't even, to be honest with you, I'm not a fan of J. Cole at all. Like, you can give me free concert tickets and I'm not going to that. But I say that to kind of make the point that you don't necessarily have to enjoy someone's music or necessarily be into that type of rapper to understand how to produce in that genre and do it well. And I think it's something that holds a lot of producers back when they only work with stuff that they're fans of, or they develop a musical ideology, and they're only going to make this certain type of track, because you never know who's going to want to buy a beat and what they're going to ask you for. So that's just something to keep in mind. And to show you guys I walk it like I talk it, I made a J. Cole beat, and not my favorite rapper at all. So anyhow, the thing that makes his music good, and what makes people really attached to it, and the movement that he has going on, is because he speaks on a lot of very real, relevant topics, and he does it over beats that are musical, which kind of gives a nice juxtaposition to like people like Young Thug, who just talk a bunch of gibberish over beats that are more synthesized. So keeping that in mind, I knew that I had to do something with some swing and something with some instruments. So the first thing, the way I've been starting my tracks a lot lately is I've been starting with the groove. So the first thing I started with, was my kick and snare. This is my this is my trap kit that I use inside of Impact. I have a tutorial that'll show you how to set something up like this, and I really recommend setting up your own custom kits, because it makes everything a lot faster. So I started with this kick right here, right? And I wound up getting this drum pattern. Now, if you hear, if you listen to that and you listen to the kick that I played you, you know that's the kick that I started out with. Originally, it sounded like this. That's the kick that I use when I wind up stacking 808s. You see, all it is, if you look in the sampler, is it's just an attack. And knowing that I was gonna be making more of a, something that's more in the style of, like real hip hop, like boom bap type of vibes. I knew that I needed something else in the sustain of that. So I have this kick that I load up with my kit. It's this one right here. Now that guy right there, it's a really nice kick. It's got a nice long tail. There's a lot of content to it, but I don't like the attack of the kick. The first sound that you hear, the way that it punches, I, for my taste, I think that it's just really plasticky. That crunch, but what I really like is that tail end. So the way that I work with this kick whenever I want to use it is I'll turn the attack on it, as slow as it'll possibly go, because what I really like is that woof sound and the vinyl crackling in the background. I see a lot of people stack kicks, and you want to that's how you want to work with your kicks. You want to pick an attack that you like, and you want to pick a sustain that you like. You don't just want to take two kicks and have them both playing at the same time, because all you did was increase the volume of the two kicks and mask a couple sounds in between them. So then when I wind up having that together, the kick winds up sounding like this. So I still get that nice punchy attack that I have from the original kick, and that nice sustain that's going on with the second kick. With the hi hats, what I went ahead and did was, again, thinking more musically, is I used a hi hat loop from a vintage pack that I bought a few years ago, and I think that everybody should have at least one um, set of some kind of break beats. Is if you can get a package that are stemmed out, where you have break beats and then they have just the hi hat loops and just the fills. You find something like that. Um, it works really good, because when you have to do these tracks to make them sound authentic, the reason why I used the loops is because this is someone playing this, and you'll hear it in it. So that type of vibe, it's going to be difficult to get it from programming a VST and selecting your own samples. That's someone on an actual kit, and when you're making tracks like this, it adds to the authenticity, because a lot of times, especially Cole, he'll have a tendency to use an actual break beat, and then stack his drums on top of it, which is where you get those really swinging hats. So I definitely recommend looking into buying a breakbeat kit. I think this one I cost me was like $40, and I've been using it for 5 years. And it's awesome. Um, the next thing was the snare. The snare that I use. This is another sound that I pre-programmed myself. It was just a regular acoustic snare, and I took and I stacked a hi hat on top of it until I got that nice it just sounds like a big metal thud coming down. And I mixed the two to taste, and I bounced it, and I just keep it in my custom drums folder. don't be scared to do stuff like that. You might mess around and make an original sound that's cool. I like this as a hip hop snare. It just, that sounds gutter to me. So, that's that's the snare work right there. And I didn't do any crazy rolls or anything like that. It's just, we're making more of a straight up hip hop song. Now, on to the exciting part about this tutorial, because if you look down at my chords down here, you'll notice that if you look down at my chords, you'll notice that there's only one chord. This is a one chord song. There is no progression. It's just the same chord played over and over again. And the way that I got this progression was I just, went ahead and played the drums. On this type of track, I always start with the groove first. So I just played the drums and started messing around on the on my MIDI controller, listen to see what sounds good, and I came up with this. And that's pretty much just me playing around with the kick. Now, this trick that I'm going to show you, it works with any chord and any rhythm you want, and it doesn't have to be a piano. It could be any instrument that you want to have your chordal bass. So I go ahead and I make this. Now, when it's time to construct the melody, that's easy. The melody I clicked in. I didn't play this melody. So what I did, and you could you can use this too to make whatever type of melodies you want to make. But remember, a chord consists of a triad chord consists of three notes: the first, the third, and the fifth. So I was hearing in my head something, the melody kind of going down. And if you ever, hear a melody in your head going down, a good idea is to kind of start on the fifth of the first chord, but in a different octave. So I went up 2 octaves. I found my fifth. I know that C is my fifth. And then, from starting here, I was just like, all right, hold down Alt, drag. Let me just go down one note and see what it sounds like. Okay, and then I was like, all right, cool. And then maybe I'll do something similar here and bring this guy up. Maybe just go down again. So then as I was listening to the second part of the rhythm, I just figured, why not just do that same method and follow along with the rhythm, So I was like, all right, I'll just put all these notes up on the fifth, and then take you down, take you down, take you down. And just kind of come up with something. So yeah, that's as easy as you can get as far as making a melody. You know what I mean? You take one chord, or you could do this with a progression too. And just dot out your rhythm, copy and paste the fifths up 2 octaves, okay, and then just start moving notes down and then move a note up and then move a note down and listen to it over and over until you start to find something, that you think sounds good. And what's going to wind up happening if you do this enough is your ear is going to become trained to this piano roll, and you're going to know if you move a note down here, how this note is going to sound next to this. And that's when you're going to get really fast. So I went ahead, once I had my melody completed, I copied and pasted this to another track. I learned a really cool trick that pianos sound really nice if you take a really good multi-sampled one, something like any of the libraries from Native Instruments. The Alicia Keys, the New York Grand, no matter which ones you got, just as long as it's a multi-sampled one, something that's a real piano, and then stack that with something super cheesy. Like, the cheesier the better, you know what I mean, like these corny ass Nexus pianos or something. And what you do is you use it as a kind of ambiance layer. So first, without it, you have this. And now when you add the ambiance layer into the mix, see, now you can hear the delay and the reverb. It gives you a more wet sound. I like that, but I wanted to really get the melody very present in the track. So I went ahead and copied that down to another region and found another, cheesy Nexus preset, and stacked it together, panned it, and wound up with this. Okay, so that's nice. You can hear that, feel that it's big and bad. So the next thing was just finding instruments to accompany this. Once you have the piano, so I went with horns, and like I was saying before about the J.Cole stuff, it being either samples or live players playing or somebody live replaying a sample. You really want to stick with instruments. Like the contact stuff or Omnisphere, like the best quality of an instrument that you could get, whatever comes as close to the real thing, is gonna be where you're gonna want to hang out. Or use a sample if you have a good one that fits in key. That's perfectly fine as well. I went with session horns. It's like unapologetically real, and all I did was I took that this is the same melody that we made, nothing changed, and I went ahead and plugged it in, and this is what you wound up with. And the reason why I really like this was because they have, Native Instruments is good about this stuff. Like, they have different articulations, and when you just have the sustain, you can hear it sounds very plain. So I found an articulation, this one that I like, called Grace Note, and it sounds more like the attack of the brass player actually blowing into the instruments is more pronounced, so you wind up with something that sounds like this. So that's really nice. Then the next thing was, as I was panning everything out, and the way that this instrument is set up because it's a section where there's four different horns across the spectrum, and that trumpet on the left side is really present and trebly. I knew I was gonna need something else to balance it in the mix. Otherwise, whenever that came on, the left speaker was just gonna be going hammer. So I just went into Omnisphere, found some expressive strings. Um, Again, same melody. This one I just stacked in octaves to make it a little thicker, and this is what you wound up with. So you can hear, the stereo image is balanced now that you have the same amount of, treble energy going on either side as I have them panned. The next thing I wanted to add was just the guitar, and I just used the one of the fingerstyle guitars inside Omnisphere. They're really good. They're multi-sampled. Whenever you play them, depending on your velocity, it'll have a different intensity of the pluck of the string, which is what I like, because it adds to the realness. I don't like guitars coming off keyboards that much, but Omnisphere does a really good job of sampling them, and I just I use a nice delay on it, and put what did I use? The black stripe army preset out of Guitar Rig, and the thing that makes it special is that I used a pitch bend on the whole duration of the time that I'm playing the note. It's one of my favorite techniques when I'm when I go ahead and use guitars. This is what it winds up sounding like. Okay, so there you have that, and then I added the say sample. Just I didn't want to put a crash, but you guys will notice I usually put something in the beginning of choruses and in the beginning of verses that are little transition effects, either cymbal splashes or impacts or explosions, or something that lets you know, like, hey, wake up, it's the verse. Hey, wake up, it's the chorus. So I like this sample for that function. Yeah, I just put I think it's a quarter note delay. Yeah, quarter note delay from my sends. Then it was on to arranging. The whole deal with arranging like a more boom bap traditional hip hop type of song is you don't have to go too crazy with adding a bunch of like snare rolls and hi-hat change ups and automations and stuff. You do that to trap beats because without them they're slow and boring. You know what I mean? But something like this, it's a little bit more upbeat, and you're gonna have a rapper. A track like this, it's gonna be lyric intensive. It's not gonna be, some silly rapper just talking about like coke and guns. And so with that being said, it's like making a track for a singer where you don't want to overload it with melodies. You don't want to overload this with a whole bunch of different production techniques, because the people who are going to be listening to a track like this, they want to hear the rapper. And the way it's going to be mixed is the rapper is going to be out front. So you don't want to make it hard for the engineer to get the rapper to cut through. So what I wind up doing is I wind up taking out the horns for this section, and in the hi-hat spaces, there's a couple spots where I just take out the hi-hats. Here I have I just took out a kick before the snare to make that one drop. This is what the verse sounds like though. Nothing too crazy. You see, I still stuck to my script of every 4 bars has to be different, but you don't have to do anything crazy. Just remember, subtle changes. It just makes all the difference in the world. This is one of my favorite techniques, is to just take, like a bar from the from the hook instrument on the beginning of the ninth bar, because some pop song formats is that instead of going 16/8, they'll go 8 hook, 8 verse, 8 hook, 8 verse, bridge, chorus, and it'll all be 8 bar patterns. So when you drop the first bar of your hook, because people are programmed to expect certain things from music, that will give them a sense of excitement when they hear it. And then when they don't get what they're expecting out of that section, it creates interest. And that's really what you're trying to do when you make beats. Like, if you just break it down to what this is all about, is you're trying to keep someone interested long enough so that they listen to the end of the song. So you that's what you want to focus on when you're making music. Now, it'd probably be good if I showed you guys what I did with the bass. I left that part out. Here we have our bass. All right, so to start out, you guys that have complete, I use the Scarby bass. The thing about this bass is you don't want to just pull it up and play it like this and expect it to sound like a hip hop track, because this is a rock bass. So what I had to do was, go to the profile and set it to soul and funk, because, you're thinking about where would you be getting a bass sound like this. It'd probably be from a soul or a funk record. That's what hip hop gets sampled from. You want to go to the EQ and turn the treble in the mid all the way down. This is what it sounds like when you don't do it. And this is the thing about being more than just a little preset monkey, and hearing the sound and being like, oh, I can't use that, because if I would have left it the way that it comes stock, you'd be like, no, there's no way I could use that for a hip hop song. There's no way I could make anything trill with that. But if you just turn down the treble, that sound. You've heard that on a ton of hip hop records. That's a hip hop bass right there. You just got to get into tweaking these sounds. So the way that the bass was created, all I did was I copy and I copy and pasted the kick pattern, and when I got it in here, hit left. I right clicked, go to musical functions, go to length, and clicked legato, and then that drug all the notes out to the next note. And then all I did was, when you're working with bass guitar, and you want to go up, you want to go up a fifth to make it sound authentic. That's typically what a bass player would do. Is if they started playing it at F, they would go up to a C. So, in the section where I had two notes, I know I want to go up and then back down, up and then back down. With bass, you're just going up and down, up and down. It's all about how you get back to this note here. Um, so just go up a fifth, and then move your notes around until you find something that goes back to the one note that sounds nice. The next thing I did was I just added a little snare roll on this part of the verse where I took the hi-hats out, and then I also put a just a little 1-2 conga loop to give it a little percussion variation. So when I made the intro, all I did was I took a 4-bar piece, and I just used the piano, the top melody, the horns, and the strings. And I wanted something a little bit different than just that playing, and then all the drums coming in, something a little bit more animated. So I went ahead and made this little glitch in automation. So yeah, there was some questions about how to do tape stops and stutters and whatnot, and I'm gonna do a whole tutorial on that. But this is an excellent tool that I use. It's called Effect Tricks by Sugar Bytes. There's I think they have a new version out or something, but I've been using this for years, and it just works. The tape stop here, vinyl, is awesome. The reverse is cool, and the stutter is really amazing too, especially when it's got a lot of low frequency content. And all I did for this was, I programmed in, I wanted this much to reverse, this much to stutter, this much to do the tape stop. It's really easy to use. All you got to do is click and drag, each one of these this is a bar, this is a bar, this is a bar, and then this is a bar. Um, and then all I had to do, because if you got to be careful, because what I did was I put this on my filter bus. This is from my custom mix template from the mix template tutorial, and I put this on the filter bus, so obviously all these tracks are going to be affected right here. But I don't want that to happen throughout the whole song, because then you wind up with this. I just want that to happen in the beginning. So what you do is you go to right here where it says read, you go to add and move parameters. This is where you tell it what automation behavior to take, and you just find whatever bypass is. It'll be over here, and you add it. And once you click add, it opens up an automation lane for you. And You just draw your automation in, letting you know that you want the plugin to be on, but throughout the rest of the song you want to bypass it. And say I wanted to bring that effect in, over here. All I would have to do is draw in this automation curve. Maybe you like that. Maybe you want like your stuff a little bit more glitchy and you want to use it like that. There's you do whatever you want. It's all about taste. So there you have it, Forrest Hill Drive style tutorial, J.Cole style. Things to remember is you want to find a kick that has a nice attack and go ahead and mix. So there you have it, Forest Hill Drive, J.Cole tutorial. Things you want to remember is you want to get a kick that has a nice attack and a short release, and then mix that with a kick that has a nice, a boomy, woofy release that has some type of vinyl crackle at the end of it. You want to get, a hi-hat loop that's really swinging and not, strictly quantized to the grid. You want to get yourself a nice fat snare. In this one, we showed you how to make a song with just one chord. That's amazing. I mean, that just goes to show you don't have to know a lot to make something great. Make sure that you pick really good multi-sampled instruments for tracks like this, because what you're doing is you're looking to either like recreate a sample feel or recreate a played feel. So if you wanted to take it a step further, like if you have Machine, or you could just, search for, vinyl crackle online, you can take one of these guys and go ahead and throw them in the track, right? Hold Alt to time stretch them. And then I'm just Alt clicking, holding down Alt and then clicking and dragging to copy these guys. Right? And go ahead and just mix this into taste. So that gives it a really nice old school vibe. If you listen to a lot of records from the early 90s and when sampling vinyl was real big, you'll hear that crackle really loud. And if you're trying to if you're vibing with an artist and you find out that they're a J. Cole fan, or they're into older style hip hop, you wind up putting something like this on top of the beat, and they're gonna love you because this is part of the vibe that's missing from hip hop. So and they'll probably talk a lot about things like that. So yeah, I appreciate you guys, keeping up with me and watching these videos and interacting. I'm gonna get up with you guys later. This is Concrete Zebra. Don't forget to go to studio1tutorials.com. We got the Travis Scott drum kit coming out soon. It's gonna have 25 loops in it. I'm designing about 10 to 15 different kicks, snares, all in individual folders. I'm doing a folder just of short attack kicks, so you can go ahead and layer them with 808s really nicely. And there'll be some other surprises in there, so you guys look out for that. But this is Concrete Zebra with Studio One Tutorials and Craftmaster Productions, and I will see you on the next one.